Okay, you've probably seen the headlines. China landing on the far side of the moon, building its very own space station. I mean, its rise as a space superpower has been, well, nothing short of meteoric. But it raises a big question, right? How is their program actually structured to pull all this off so quickly? What are the secrets behind that success? Well, that's what we're here to do. Let's start peeling back the layers and really understand the blueprint that's driving this incredible ambition.
So here's how we're going to tackle this. Think of it like peeling an onion. We'll kick things off with their biggest recent wins. You know, the stuff that gets all the attention. Then, we'll dig into the industrial giants that actually build the hardware. After that, we'll get into the core strategy that ties everything together. Then, the military's role, which is huge. And finally, we'll get right to the very center, the ultimate control that makes the whole thing tick. By the end, you'll have a much clearer picture of how this all works.
And really, this quote from President Xi Jinping, it just says it all, doesn't it? Is our eternal dream. This really gets to the heart of the ambition here. This isn't just about planting flags or doing science for science's sake. No, it's a fundamental piece of what they call the China Dream. It's this massive national project. In space exploration, that's front and center. It's about building national pride at home and, signaling to the rest of the world that China is a major player on the global stage.
And wow, the results of that dream, they speak for themselves. I mean, just look at this list. A permanently crewed space station, Tiangong, just orbiting above us right now. The Chang'e missions, which did something nobody had ever done before, brought back samples from the far side of the moon. And then there's Tianwen-1, their Mars mission, an orbiter, a lander, and a rover, all in one shot. That's incredibly difficult. They're just systematically checking off these huge milestones, and it's clear they're in the absolute top tier of spacefaring nations. No question about it.
So when you hear about China's space program in the news, this is probably the name you see, the CNSA, the China National Space Administration. They're the ones who handle the public-facing stuff, right? Signing agreements with other countries, announcing the cool new science missions. A lot of people just assume it's basically China's version of NASA. But, and this is the key, that's really just the surface. It's the most visible, outermost layer of that onion we talked about.
And that brings us right back to our big questions. Who is really calling the shots? And how on earth is this whole thing organized to be so effective so fast? The answer, as you're about to see, lies in a structure that is just fundamentally different from the model most of us are used to seeing in the West.
All right, let's do it. Let's peel back that first layer and find out who's actually building all this amazing hardware.
Okay, so right away, we hit a really important distinction that confuses a lot of people. You've got the CNSA, which we said is the public diplomatic phase, but then you have the China Manned Space Agency, the CMSA. And these guys, they run the entire human spaceflight program. We're talking the taikonauts, the space station, all of it. And here's the kicker. They don't report to a civilian agency. They report directly to the military. This split is our very first major clue that things are organized in a totally different way here.
So if CNSA and CMSA are kind of like the managers, then who's actually turning the wrenches and building the rockets? Well, it's these two behemoths, CASC and CASIC. These are massive state-owned corporations. Seriously, they're the industrial heart and soul of the entire program, with hundreds of thousands of employees. CASC, in particular, is the prime contractor for pretty much everything you recognize. The iconic Long March rockets, the Shenzhou capsules that carry the taikonauts, you name it. These are the companies that are literally building the dream.
Okay, let's go one layer deeper. To really get how this all works together so smoothly, you have to understand the core doctrine, the central idea that underpins the whole thing. And that idea is called military-civil fusion.
So, military-civil fusion, or Junmin Ronghe, this isn't just some policy memo. It is a top-level national strategy. And the goal is actually pretty simple, but it's incredibly powerful. It's all about erasing the lines, breaking down the walls between the military, the civilian world, and the commercial sector. The whole point is to make sure that any technological breakthrough, it doesn't matter if it comes from a small tech startup or a big state-run laboratory, can be used to serve the country's main strategic goals.
So how does that actually work in practice? Well, it's pretty straightforward. First, the state sets the big, long-term goals in those famous five-year plans. Then, all the resources get shared. We're talking everything from high-tech research labs to the actual launch pads themselves. And this part is absolutely critical. Innovation becomes a two-way street. So if a new commercial company comes up with some cool new tech, it can be pulled over for military use. And, at the same time, cutting-edge military research can be spun off to create new civilian products and industries.
So, here's the bottom line. If you're trying to draw a neat, clean line between China's civilian space program and its military one, you can't. It's pretty much impossible because the entire system is designed so that line doesn't exist. This fusion is exactly why the program can look so opaque and secretive from the outside. But on the inside, it's what makes it so incredibly integrated and efficient.
Well, a strategy like that, this deep fusion, naturally leads us to our next layer, the powerful and direct command role of the People's Liberation Army, the PLA. Here's a fact that, honestly, tells you almost everything you need to know. Think about this. Every single Chinese astronaut, or taikonaut, is an active duty officer in the People's Liberation Army. Every single one. That's a huge difference from most other space programs. It tells you right away that the human spaceflight program is, from its very DNA, a military operation. And if you look at the chain of command, it's crystal clear. The key players, like the CMSA that runs the human missions, and the Aerospace Force, which is in charge of launches and space surveillance, they don't answer to some government science ministry. Nope. They report straight up the chain to the Central Military Commission, which is the absolute highest military command body in all of China.
And look, this isn't just about names on an org chart. This military control is real and tangible. It extends to the actual physical nuts and bolts of the program. All 4 of their major launch centers run by the PLA. The place where they select and train the taikonauts? PLA. That huge global network of tracking stations you need to talk to a spacecraft? You guessed it, all operated directly by the People's Liberation Army.
Okay, so we've peeled back the public-facing layer, the industrial layer, and the military layer. We are now getting to the very core of the onion, the absolute apex of power that holds the ultimate authority over this entire enterprise.
And here it is. The ultimate authority isn't a government agency, and it's not even the military itself. The final say, the supreme authority, is political. It rests with the top leadership of the Communist Party of China. Every single major decision, every long-term strategy is set at the very, very top of the country's political structure.
So this is basically how that power structure breaks down. Right at the very top, you have the party's Politburo Standing Committee. They are the ones setting the grand, long-term vision. They give the commands to the Central Military Commission, and the CMC, in turn, directs everybody else we've talked about, the PLA's Aerospace Force, the government CNSA, and those massive state-owned companies like CASC and CASIC that are building everything. It's a perfect top-down structure. Everything flows from that single point at the apex.
So now that we've seen all the individual layers, let's step back and put it all together. Let's look at why this unique, totally integrated model is just so incredibly effective. This kind of unified structure has some serious advantages. First, that unwavering political will from the top means they can plan for decades at a time, something that's really hard to do in countries where politics shift every few years. Second, that whole military-civil fusion thing, it creates incredible efficiency, cutting down on duplicated effort. And finally, because space is such a high national priority, the program is incredibly resilient. It's shielded from the kind of year-to-year budget fights that can slow down or cancel big projects elsewhere.
And if you want to see that efficiency in action, just look at this chart. In 2024, the US government's space budget was nearly 4 times bigger than China's. Just let that sink in. 4 times bigger. And yet China is achieving results that are not just comparable, but in some cases, like the far side of the moon, are genuine world firsts. And that right there, that is the direct result of the structure we've been talking about. This tightly integrated, top-down, state-directed system is what allows China to go after these huge goals, like landing people on the moon by 2030, while spending just a fraction of what its main rival does. The efficiency is, frankly, remarkable.
So all of this leaves us with a really big final question to think about. As we all start to push further out into space, into the final frontier, what does it mean for the future of exploration when you have a model like this incredibly efficient, powerful, state-directed machine where science, industry, and the military are all fused into one single purpose?